Hi, how's everyone? Good. So I have to make a few disclaimers before we get going. I'm not much of a public speaker, so but I believe in this, and I'm very excited to be here, and I'm honored to see such a big crowd, so thank you for coming. Second disclaimer, I don't think I have much of an advice, although Paris, thank you for that faith in me. I'm going to share with you guys what I think have helped me in my journey, and I truly believe that my best days are ahead of me. The things that helped me so far hopefully are the things that will continue to help me, but I'm sure they will also look different 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 30 years from now, right? So, third disclaimer, if it's not entertaining, I apologize. She is giving out cards. Those are distractions. Right? If you get bored with what I'm saying, just read it. The idea is those cards basically talk about what I believe to be my leadership philosophy. So I'm not going to spend much time about my leadership style or anything like that. These are all things that I'll talk about, which are my tools. But I hope you read that card and toss it off. And I sincerely mean that, because I think everyone has their own leadership philosophy. And this is just something that I wanted to share with you guys, right? Fourth one is I actually wanted some music. We couldn't figure it out in the last minute, because I thought if I'm going to have a cathartic moment in front of so many people, I should do it in style, right? So I'm not going to be able to do that, but I'm going to look towards you, because this is a dialogue. If you have questions, please stop me and ask. And next 1 hour, I'm going to take you through a journey of who I am. Yeah? With that, that's who I am. I'm a mom first, I think, and foremost, and forever I will be. I'm a wife and a partner, and I am married to a very crazy man. Some of you know that. And pretty wild as well, and I love the ride. And I am an individual myself, right? I've had many titles in my life, honestly, from an analyst to currently a VP, before that a director, senior manager, senior associate, chief of staff. I loved all my titles. I love all my titles, and many more future titles. If my boss is here, I want more titles. I don't know what. That's my pitch for next step. Right? But I tell you what, I do have a lot of informal titles, and those are the ones I love best. I was introduced at CES by my boss, actually, to another individual by saying, "This is Sruta, Chief Whipping Officer." I like that title. I also was introduced many times as the closer, because I tend to close deals. I hope I continue to do so. I'm also introduced typically as SVU. Anyone sees Law and Order? Yeah. I don't want to know why I'm called that, honestly. But anyway, above all, the titles that I love the most are mom, and my husband is somewhere here. He calls me sometimes Saska. Those two mean a lot. My point is that you have titles, and then you truly have titles. I love my other titles more than the real titles, but it doesn't hurt to have a C in front of your titles. So, with that said, a few things about me. When I was 5 years old, I saw a movie where the heroine of that movie was a dancer. I was so inspired by it. I told my mom, I want to learn classical dancing. She said, "Are you sure? It's quite a commitment." I said, "Oh yeah, I'm absolutely sure." So she finds the best teacher, who happens to be, he has one eye, he can barely walk. He was 82 when I met him, and I was 5 years old. And I thought, oh my gosh, that movie made this all seem so glamorous. And here I am with this old man. What am I going to do? I tell you what, I did make a commitment. For 17 years, I was a classical dancer. He taught me a lot. He passed away. I performed, I taught. The irony of all that training that I've had, my husband has never seen me dance classical. And he actually doesn't believe that story. But I think that instilled a lot in me. Number one, commitment. Every morning for 5 days in a week at 5 a.m., he used to show up. This old man, 82 years old, he used to show up. I did that until I was 18 years old. Honestly, that was a lot of training. So now I'm also ruined for life because of that, because I always get up very early thanks to that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do, right? But it also taught me that enduring, persistence are very, very important qualities in life. I don't know if I'm any good at dancing, but I tell you what, if music starts, I can't stop, right? And that's very true, figuratively speaking, and otherwise too. But it taught me quite a bit. And I think much later in life, I went to an all-girls school, 100% girls. I don't know if any one of you have been to all-girls schools. You compete amongst yourself, you make girlfriends, you love each other, you hate each other, all of the above. But I never knew what it is to compete in the real world because I truly grew up in an all-girls school setting until my 12th grade. Then I graduated. I took what's called a medical entrance test. Some of you are Indian here, I see. And I was hoping to actually bomb that in the bad way, not the right way, because it was destined that in my family I was going to be a doctor, and I didn't want to be a doctor. So I went and I thought I bombed it, and I got an 843 rank, which out of 300K people, or approximately 300K, again, I thought life is ruined because now I have to go to a medical school. By the way, 843, that's a rank that losers get, so it's not stellar, trust me. But I still had hope that I would get into a good school, which I could, get into a good medical school. I did not want to be a doctor. So I convinced my parents that it's time for me to come to US to renew my green card. So they paid for my ticket. I came here and I never went back. That was how I told them I don't want to be a doctor. Then I worked a lot of odd jobs to make enough money. Was living with my aunt and uncle, and found enough money to apply to a few schools. Ended up getting into 1 or 2 schools. And I'll give you some statistics, interesting statistics, right? In my entire engineering class, there were 44 girls. I came to US for my undergrad. I went to Case Western Reserve. I don't know if anyone knows about that school. It's a small school in Cleveland. There were 44 girls in the entire engineering class. And there were about 6 girls in my group. I was in biomedical engineering and electrical engineering, right? That seems rough, doesn't it? Well, there were 2 bathrooms in that entire building for women. So in those days, women were not really common in engineering schools. Please, that doesn't date me, okay? However, the interesting point there is it's actually not that bad. You know why? Because I got a lot of attention. There were only 6 girls and there were a lot of boys. Life is good, right? Anyway, I think that experience taught me quite a bit, which is, I'm an optimist, I'm a realist, I'm also sometimes pessimist, but I gotta be an opportunist, right? These are not my words. I think a lot of wise women said this, but I think that's very, very true. Life throws at you a lot of things, but you gotta figure out what opportunity you take out of it. And that was mine. I loved the attention, honestly. There was another way to think about it. There were a lot of scholarships that one could get at the university. They were mostly, not gender-based, but there were a few which were gender-based. And guess what? The competition for those gender-based scholarships, 6 girls, oh, piece of cake. So I got all the scholarships that I could get. Another opportunity there, right? Anyway, another thing, after I graduated, I went and worked as an engineer for a few years. And then I went to business school. Y2K happened for the world, but Y2K happened to me in a very different way. I met my husband. I didn't drink before that. I didn't swear as much. I drink a lot. Those of you who drank with me know that all it takes is 4 sips, and I get pretty interesting. I do swear quite a bit too. But anyway, another turning moment in my life. I've met many people in my life, and I think he has been amazing. I never tell it that. And after that, a few years later, we had 2 kids, 2 wonderful kids, the best times of my life. I think they really made me a better person. There's no better way to describe our family than that picture on that right-hand side, right? I have a bookworm. I have a kid who is very chilled and very laid back, and I have a husband who doesn't take anything seriously. I'm having a serious conversation, and those 3 sit there and make fun of it. That's truly the story of our life, right? On the left-hand side, actually, that's a picture from one of the DISH team summits. I don't know if anyone recognized the person in the middle. That's one of the Olympic wrestlers. But I do feel like that when I'm with my family. It doesn't feel normal, but that's our normal, right? Fast forward a few months ago. This is when actually I met Paris regarding this. I got promoted, and within few minutes, I got more than 150 emails. Literally, out of the 150 emails, about 114 of them, I'm not kidding, were from women. That really spurred something in me. I thought so far I did what I did for myself, but going forward, I gotta do everything for my little girl, for my little boy, and for all those people who believe in me. I think I believe in myself now and into the future. But I hope, I'm mature enough and have the ability to carry the torch, and hopefully, all of you do so too, right? With that, I'm not going to tell you more about my life story because that's a beer time story and a sob story. So we'll move into other things in life. Life is short, so live in the moment and make it count. I think the next few slides are very simple. These are not, again, advice or anything like that. These are things that I have used as tools and techniques, which I think have helped me not just survive, but thrive, right? I also think these are the things which keep constantly reminding me that the best days are ahead of me and not behind me. What I have achieved so far truly is going to dwarf from what I want to achieve in the next few years. Again, hint to my boss, right? Know what you want to get out of the experience. I think for me, it's extremely, extremely important, right? If I take a job, I want to know that I walk into it with my eyes wide open. It's less for me about the titles, although they are sweet. It's less for me about the money, although I am pretty shallow and I want money. But what it is more about for me is truly the experience that I get out of it. And I want to walk in knowing that, is this an easy job, or is this a hard job, or is it a complex job, or is it an ambiguous job? But I want to know that ahead of that. The reason being, when I look back, I think I walk away with no regrets. And I think the worst that comes out of it is preparedness for the next, right? I truly believe in this. I've had good jobs, I've had great jobs, I've had fun jobs, I've had jobs where I didn't want to go the next morning, but I still find a way to go, because I know when you go through that journey, it's the experience that matters, right? And sometimes it's not about the job that you do, it's about the people, or it's about the environment. So those are the things that I look towards, at least in my personal experience, to kind of shift my focus and keep going, right? Make the job yours, but don't own the job. It's like, what's that mumbo jumbo? Truly speaking, there is a difference in my mind. The way how I think about it is, if you make the job yours, you may be given a boundary of what you're supposed to do in that job, right? But if you make it yours, you will actually not only do that job, but you'll do a lot more, because it is about making your mark, right? It is about changing that boundaries too sometimes. I don't think I have ever entered a job thinking this is exactly my job. I tell you what, 5 days into the job, I'll find out, well, if I want to succeed, I need to get that done. Heck, I'm going to go and do that, right? So for me, it's very important that I think about it that way, but I never own the job. The reason being, if I feel like I own the job, I know I will get territorial. That's something about me that I know myself. And if I get territorial, that's a bit freakish because it gets boundaries, then I may not be able to let go of it, then I fear that it won't allow me to take the next step, which could be my next job, right? The more you just get territorial about it and have let go issues, the less likely I feel that I'm ready for the next job, right? Pleasure in making extraordinary look ordinary. This is something that I have seen my mom do on an everyday basis. Very personal moment for me. My mom is 72 plus. She has had 2 strokes. She is showing signs of early Alzheimer's. She still runs every day or walks every day 2 to 3 miles. Extremely healthy individual. And she is a remarkable woman who every single day makes her extraordinary self look really ordinary. Really, really ordinary, right? And when I look at that, this is what I think about it. Instead of making herself look exclusive and attainable and completed, she makes herself look achievable, attainable, and continuous. What it tells me is that if you make ordinary look extraordinary, right, you make it look exclusive, that means you sort of have achieved a complacent state, right? There is no more learning. You have sort of completed yourself. I don't want to be in that state. I actually want to be in the opposite state. I wish I can make extraordinary look ordinary because constantly I can learn. Constantly I can feel that I'm not really complete, right? And it may sound weird to say and admit that I'm not complete, but I actually wear it with pride that I truly am not complete because that allows me to learn more, right? It's a different way of looking at it, but seeing a 72-year-old woman who is losing her mind and tries to do that every single day, it gives me goosies, actually. But it gives me that inspiration to think that life is not complete. You got to keep learning. Know the difference between focus and locus, and I can see a few people who will be laughing about this. It's not locusts, it's locus. I have to admit, English is my 3rd language, but locusts are different from locus. It's probably an engineering term, so my apologies for the geekiness of it. But I do think if you have focus without knowing the locus, it's really useless, right? Focus is very important in life. This is personally, at least, how I believe in it. But if you don't know where to direct your focus, and if you don't know the coordinates of where that focus should belong to, what is that for? It doesn't really mean much in my mind, right? And that's what locus is. Locus is location, coordinates, relevance, the context of where you need to use your focus. I thought in the business context, there's no other better way than to say it, which is strategy is the power behind an organizational focus. Execution is the power behind organizational locus. So if you just have strategy and you don't know how to execute on it, there's really not much of a business that you can pull about, right? You got to know where that strategy needs to be applied to, how it needs to be applied to. You need to understand your marketplace, so on and so forth. What are all those things? That's the context, that's the locus. Focus without locus, right? So for me, I personally think that execution doesn't exist without strategy and vice versa. But that's in the business sense of things. The way I think about focus is always, I need to know my coordinates. How am I going to use this focus? Don't get me wrong, I do lose my focus a lot of times. 4 Gs. This is really, really extremely, extremely important for all of us. Whether we are women or men, it doesn't matter. In my mind, gender, genes, geography, and generation, these are the things you can't change. I'm not a millennial, but I'm in the business of selling to millennials, right? I need to get that out of my head that I'm never going to be as cool as the millennials because I'm not, right? Geography. If you're listening to me, you know I have like about 55 accents. I can't tell where my accents are from, but I'm also not conscious about that, honestly. I truly don't care about it. If the other person doesn't understand it, I'm more than happy to repeat it a few times. And actually, I don't even think about it until the other person mentions to me, well, you meant that word. No, I meant this word. It's because I pronounce it differently, right? But I just don't want to think about it, and I don't want that to come into my head. Genes and gender. I tell you what, when you walk into a meeting, a conference room, a boardroom, any context that you walk into, you look around, there's always something that's different about you than everybody else. Either you're shorter, thinner, taller, you're a woman, man. If you look for it, there's always a difference, something different about you, right? Why fight that? Why think about that? Just get it out of your head. The reason I feel that way is if you don't think about all those things, then I'm more present there than not. Sometimes I get a chance to go to Monday morning meetings. When I walk in, actually when I think back, probably there are not that many women. Probably everybody is at least 1.5 foot taller than me. Probably all of them have perfect American accent, right? Because Americans have accent too, right? I'm either younger or older than somebody else. But if I'm thinking about that, what I do know is, here's what I'm sweating about in those meetings. I walk in and I go, am I on time? I have to remember to say good morning to everyone when it's my turn to speak up, and someone has given the keys to this car. I don't want to crash the damn car. Sorry, HR, darn car, right? The reason I'm sharing that example with you is that for me to be present there, I gotta get rid of those G's in my head, right? It's really, really important for me. Don't be the problem, but do the problem. If there's anyone on my team, I think they hear it like about 10 times every day. They're probably freaking annoyed about it. But I think there's really a lot of truth about it. I don't know if you guys can read the cartoon there. I'm going to train you to confront difficult people, okay? That's what that guy is telling everybody. And he's saying, raise your hands if you're a difficult person. That's like trying to solve it instantaneously, hitting it head on, being very direct about it. If you sit there and think and complain about a problem, I tell you what, it takes much longer than actually going and solving the problem itself, right? Don't be that problem, just do that problem, right? Sometimes you can call it as bias to action. Sometimes you could even call it as thoughtlessness, right? But the point there is that there are things that you see in your jobs every day. Someone did not put paper in the machine. Someone didn't send you an email. Someone was supposed to follow up, they did not do it. You're sitting in the meeting, someone was supposed to take notes. These are all things that you see on an everyday basis. Tell me that you don't see this. Raise your hands if you don't see this. You do, right? So you see them as problems or you do them. Be the one who takes the notes. I tell you what, every single individual on my team knows this. Usually I take the notes in all the meetings. And when I walk out, I have the most to-dos. I don't know how that happens. But the point there is, I actually don't care. I want to do the problem. I want to be in it. I don't want to be the one who is pointing it out or be the problem itself, right? Lastly, I love this slide, not because I put it up there, but my daughter was sitting next to me while I was pulling these slides together. And she said, what are you talking about, Mom? I said, there's a few people and I'm going to be talking to this group. She said, is it more than 10? I said, I hope so. Then she said, what's the theme? So I showed her the theme. Then I said, would you draw something for me? She said, for the beginning or for the ending? I said, I don't know, what do you think? And she told me, tell the story. So I told her the story. Then she said, I'll do the end. Then she asked me, what's the end about? I said, you know what? This is my story, and I want to walk in my shoes. So she came up with that rendition. Left is big shoes, so me trying to fit into somebody else's shoes to embark on this journey, right? The right-hand side is me in my shoes. I think I mentioned earlier, this journey is really beginning for me. What I have achieved so far, I hope is going to be dwarfed in front of what I want to achieve. I really am very unashamed to say, I want it all. I want to be a great wife, I want to be a great mom, I want to be the CEO sometime. I just want it all. And I don't think I need to apologize for that, right? But I want to write that story the way I want to write it. I want to write that story with me wearing my shoes. You know why? Because if I try to get into somebody else's shoes, try taking 4 steps in shoes that are that big. I know I will not get there. That's why I need to have my own shoes on. That's why I need to write my own story. So with that, those are some very wise words, apparently, according to my daughter, by Dr. Seuss. You have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. I do think those are pretty wise words, and that's the only sentence of wisdom that I can share with you. If nothing else, when you walk away from here, I want you to think about one thing. Stay inspirable in life, right? If we don't get inspired, I do think it doesn't push us to the next thing. I get inspired by many things on a daily basis. I honestly get goosies with acts of kindness. Every individual team member on my team inspires me. Literally, they all have their own quirks, they all have their own exceptional characters, and they do something every single day which makes me go, my goodness, I'm so excited to be part of this team, because if I didn't have that moment of inspiration, I may not have taken the next step forward, right? If nothing else, stay inspired and feel inspirable, right? With that, that's all I have. So I got a nod from Paris and Michelle. Thank you for being such a good audience. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to make sure I answer them, or at least try to.
I'm sure in your career you've had people who doubted your potential, and how did you deal with that? Because like you said, you are different. So people have the potential to judge you in many ways. How do you get around that physically and mentally as well?
It's a great question. Yes, that's true. I've probably had more failures in life than successes. It's always glamorous to only talk about successes. But it's almost on a daily basis you're doubted. Actually, some of you very well know, with you all in the room, you do take insults, but you got to take them with grace, right? It's I was on a call several months ago, and actually a few of you know about this. The person on the other side, we were talking about something very, very technical. He basically said, oh, you won't understand. I said, okay, what's the next step? He said, well, a bunch of technical people are going to go and meet this partner of ours on that day. So I said, I'd like to come. He said, oh, don't bother, because you just won't get it. This is a real story. I said, okay, I'm going to book my flight and I'll see you there. Right? The honest truth is I may not get it, actually, and I don't want to feel like I'm going to compete with this individual. But I do think that I may think slightly differently and catch a nuance that this individual may not catch, right? So if you ask me physically, how do I prepare myself? I want to say I do remarkable things like run 5 miles every day, and no, nothing remarkable like that, honestly. But I just know myself. I need to be very comfortable in my skin. And I need to know that not everything that I know, everyone knows. Not everything that others know, I know. And I got to be okay with that.
Yeah. When you say that you want it all, how do you manage your time? You have time for all the different things you want to do?
I should ask my husband to close his ears now. I don't think I manage it all. I think I can do better, honestly. I do get up early. I think most nights I'd sleep late, so there's only so many hours that you can do. But I do think it's a bit of priority and prioritization. I'm really horrible about formality, like setting specific timelines around doing it. I'm much more about completing it, which makes it very hard on my family. But I think it's also finding out who you are with and what kind of support they are and how much they believe in you. Because I tell you what, it is painful to be with an individual like me. But if you trust each other and know that some days are like this, some days are the other way around, and you live in that moment every single day, I guess you figure it out. And I'd like to think every day I do better than the previous day. But I don't want to stop not wanting it all. I do want it all. I genuinely do. And somewhere in there, I want to squeeze in, charity work. Somewhere in there, I want to squeeze in painting, dancing. I don't know. There's quite a few things that travel. I forgot about that. I want to do that too. But I don't think I get it right. I don't think I'll ever get it right, but I'm not going to stop from trying to figure out how to get it done and how to get it right. It may be wrong, but it's keep trying.
Could you talk briefly about your transition from the engineering world to the business world and deciding to go back to school?
I think I wasn't a good engineer. That's the answer. No, that's self-deprecation is always fun. I think I was actually a pretty good engineer. I was a biomedical engineer. I loved it. I kept up with what was going on in that industry for a very, very long time. Even though occasionally I go back to see the company that I worked for, what they are doing. But I was in defense. A lot of work that I was doing in those days was actually straight for Operation Desert Storm, so I can't even talk about most things that we did, all legal. But I do think when I was working as an engineer, I met a bunch of West Pointers who they swear like sailors. We all started to chat. They were all engineers, and they all had a good idea. I jumped on board with them, quit my job, joined them, didn't get paid for a few months. It was a startup gig. I loved it, loved it. I was an engineer, then became a product manager, but then I realized I capped off. I did not know how to run a business. I did not know what profit meant, what bottom line means, what's revenue, how to read a P&L statement, what does it take to market, what does it take to actually be the first mover, or what is a market entry point, or things like that, right? So that's when I realized, I love what I'm doing, but I want to do more. At some point, I'd like to, push myself to do the next thing. And that's when I thought I should go to an MBA school and get an MBA. Instead, found a husband, but that's how I transitioned, basically. I didn't look back. I don't miss engineering. I do keep up with it. I admire them. I think it taught me a lot of discipline. Engineers think a certain way, and I think I'm handicapped from being an engineer in the past. But it served me well, and I'll never leave that behind me. But I don't think I also don't aspire to be an engineer in the future. To answer your question. Very quiet crowd. I should have that music going, Paris. What else? Hey.
School calls with both of you working in a very stressful place, and school calls and one of your kids is sick. How do you guys decide who's going to handle that?
I think there is no decision. I think it's instinct at that point. Whoever gets the call, both of us are really, honestly, very good about just dropping everything and running. It was not long ago, we got a call from school. First, I think the call came to me, and then it went to my husband, that our kid had a concussion and was in the nurse's office. I have to say, I couldn't think. All I did was texted my husband, dropped everything, started to walk down, and realized I don't have car keys nor my purse. And I was walking in the hallway with tears rolling down. It was really, I don't know who says that you shouldn't show your vulnerable side, but if there is a metric for that, I will fail miserably. Because literally I couldn't think. And then I had met my husband on the way there, because he was like, heck with it, I'm coming too. So we both rushed in that instance. But I think it's instinct. If I'm traveling, obviously, he's there. If he's traveling, I'm there. But I don't think we make it a choice or an option. We just let the instinct go. It's tough. It makes you feel guilty every day. Yeah.
You said that you went to an all-girls high school and that you had never competed with men. How do you feel that the all-girls school environment prepared you or didn't prepare you working at Dish or going to a school like Case Western in engineering?
The real answer is ignorance is a bliss. I think that's true. Actually, not just high school, from kindergarten, it was all girls' school. And there's some irony in it. I'm going to digress a little back and then come back to your question. All my life in school, my dad told me, go achieve this, become the president, become this, become that, be unstoppable. And then I was 14, and suddenly he's like, you can't laugh that loud. You can't walk that way. Suddenly everything changed, you know. But reality of it is, I didn't know any better. If you're in an all-girls school, you do everything that everyone does. The rules are, you know, really very fuzzy when it comes to behavior otherwise or whatnot. But I also did not know what to expect when I went to what's called a co-ed setup. So I think more than anything else, for me, it was a cultural shock that I was dealing with rather than having to figure out how to compete with men or the real world in many ways. Because I left when I was fairly young as a teenager, came here. If you notice, I'm not telling my age at all, so none of you can back calculate it. But I think when I came here, I was more worried about things like, I would say basket and people would say basket. And you know, I was more worried about things like that. I never thought about I'm competing with a man or a woman or anything like that. But I do have to tell you, it exposed me to a lot of best friends. A lot of them are men, were men. And actually my husband was a great friend of mine before we got married. But I learned a ton from that, which is, you know, statistically and as well as non-statistically, that's a word, right? There's not that many women in many places, other than when I went to school in an all-girls setting. So you just adapt, I think. I don't know if there was a silver bullet to it. And you just figure out that you're not going to have many examples. You just shouldn't look for examples. You just need to do what you need to do and figure it out. And hopefully you will be an example, or you will add to the statistic so that there'll be more examples for others, right? So I don't know, I think it was ignorance, just not knowing helped me. Naivete sometimes is good. You get underestimated, there's value in that, right? Hey?
So you're in a position where you get to hire and develop people who will come behind you in positions and grow with the company. What do you look for, right, when you're looking for the next generation of people to do what you do? What qualities are you looking for?
Great question. I don't think I always make right hiring decisions because I've had many of those introspective and self-reflective moments where I go, why and what was I thinking? Absolutely not, you know the answer. But I really don't think I look for skills anymore. I don't know when was the last time when I interviewed an individual looking for a skill, because I think skills are something that are coachable and are table stakes. If you don't have project management experience, if you can't do spreadsheets, if you're not analytical, if you're not a problem solver, I think those are all teachable, coachable. I think what I look for are those which are not teachable or coachable, the right attitude. Do you have the attitude to just jump in and do it? Do you have the attitude to be a good team player? Are you very, very uncomfortable with ambiguous situations? I truly think you can't teach anyone attitude. Do you guys agree? Right? It's you just come with it, right? I know that would be interesting to try to sit someone down and say, you don't have the right attitude. Let me teach you what the right attitude is. So maybe because I'm not even skilled in trying to do that, right? So truly, I look for attitude. I look for that individual's ability to be a team player. The small cards that I'm passing around, I truly believe in that, which is, you know, if they're not a team player, I don't think on this earth we can live, because there's no one who really survives just living on an island unless you're in a TV show called Survivor, right? you live in a community, and you got to figure out how to get along. You're going to spend more time with your team than with your loved ones. You might as well be part of a team where you really like them, right? If you don't, gosh, you're going to make it miserable. So your selection should be that, do I want to make a miserable choice or do I want to make a happy choice, right? So in my mind, I think those are the things I truly look for: the attitude, the team spirit. And the last thing, which sometimes it could go between, in my mind, coachable as well as something you come with, work ethic. Some people just have the work ethic. I have a team of, I think, about 15 to 20 people. I think they all have such a remarkable work ethic. And all of them are taller than me, so I feel so tall standing next to them. I do, right? Because I get inspired by that work ethic. I also work with a boss who has an incredible work ethic. I have a partner who has an incredible work ethic. That's something that just really inspires me. When I see them have a very long day, something crashes on Friday evening at 5 p.m., that's my litmus test. The person I'm interviewing, will this person have my back or not? If they don't, I really don't want them on my team, right? It's 3 simple things in my mind. Everything else, it's okay if they don't have any of the rest of it. But how are you?
How did you decide to make the transition from Dish over to Sling?
Oh, how did I?
Yeah.
That's a funny story. So I used to work in programming before this, and Thursday evening, my then boss, Dave Schultz, said, you might get a call from Joe tomorrow. I said, okay, what is it about? He said, just go meet him. Okay, I swear I showed up at 6:30, but it felt like I was late to office already because there was a call from Joe at, I don't know, 6:20 or something. So I show up in his office and he goes, we value what you do for the company, right? And I thought, I'm getting fired. And he said, I want you to go and meet Roger. I said, I know Roger. But he said, we're thinking about bringing Dish Digital, it was called Dish Digital here. We think you could be helpful there. What do you think? How do you answer that question, guys? When a CEO says, we think we need your help or you'll be good at it, what do you think? How do you answer that question?
Yes.
Right? I'm like, I'll think about it. No, I said yes, but I didn't know what the job was. He said, go meet with Roger. I met with Roger. Roger knew me from before. He basically shared where things were. And I said, can I raise my hand for biz dev, business development? And he said, yeah, there are all these other areas too, but think about it. And there was a rock star in that role already before me. And those were big shoes to fill, right? I mean, he was really good at what he was doing. But I thought I'd learn a ton and I might add value, and I just jumped in. Honestly, that was as simple as it rolled, and it happened in less than 30 minutes. But it's been one heck of a ride since then. So really not much went into that other than I saw someone raise their hand here. Right? Anything else? Well, thank you for all your time.